use the same one, and he's not that actually far off. The biz buy sell, the deals that they cite are all like probably 1/3 to maybe half the size of this. So when you look at deals in the kind of the revenue range of 2 to 3 million, they do start around 3 times STE. So
Yeah, but not as high as 4.
yeah, so I don't think he's that far out of the ballpark. So
I like to think they will fall between 2.5 and 3.5.
yeah, I think we can get it in that area.
Okay, good.
Hi, everybody.
Rich.
Good afternoon.
I
Hey,
Hey, Daniel,
I
can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you,
Okay.
Rich.
All right, because my Google
Guys,
Meet hasn't been working.
yeah, it's Google Meets now. It's no longer Zoom.
Okay.
Wanted to, well, you all know Rich, and reason for Rich being here is to be a co-host, and going forward, he's going to have much more active role into the, with the organization of these weekly calls, and in the guest speakers, will also be, through his network. All of us will be, making contributions in terms of suggesting topics and speakers and all of that. But Rich is going to do probably most of the um, heavy lifting, on the organization of the calls. So there's going to be a transition. I'm still going to participate, but I need to, take other responsibilities that Hayden is giving me as we make progress with the debt fund. Uh, Ken and I thought it was necessary for Hayden to have more time to meet investors, and use his time in a little bit of a different manner. So I'm taking some of Hayden's activities. Rich is helping me, and the idea is also that Rich will be helping with coaching as well. Rich is a great guy. He's not because he's here, but I do like him a lot. Yeah, I'm being honest. I'm always honest. Doesn't matter if Rich is around or not. He's very smart, um, and is business savvy. He's an expert mergers and acquisitions. So the same, good advice and the experience and insight you get from me, you're gonna have from him, and I'm sure much better. So
Oh, don't say that.
yeah,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Daniel. But
plus
no,
he's charismatic.
no, I'm not. Hey, you can. I don't think my girlfriend would agree with you on that. Yeah. So we'll try to. Daniel and I will transition it. Obviously, Daniel will be a part of any of the calls that he wants to be a part of moving forward. Um, and I'll kind of host the calls starting next week. And my idea, for the most part, there'll be some weeks where I'll try to have guests on as much as possible. But one of the ideas I have for this particular weekly call is to turn it more into acquire a university, so to speak, and really focus on aspects of the acquisition process, and even maybe even with operations by having someone like Daniel on or Quinn on or Hayden to talk about operations. But what we'll do is really every week have a theme. So we'll focus it on one week. We'll focus it on maybe uh, sourcing a deal. Maybe another week we'll talk about valuation. Maybe another week we'll talk about um, you know the acquisition process itself and kind of some of the due diligence steps. Maybe one week we'll talk about dealing with legal issues. But it will all be there'll be themes around each meeting. Actually, and I'll let you guys know ahead of time. Most of these will be taken from a combination of the Acquira training that you guys have gone through, but also will be taken from kind of current events that are happening in small business acquisitions, as well as some of the article content that we put together on the blog site that you guys can read through. So I'll pick and choose kind of what's relevant for you guys, the most relevant. We won't get into anything that's that's more geared towards maybe larger transactions because we're focused on the small business acquisitions. So I'll pick a topic that's relevant and maybe something that's challenging, that's been challenging a number of you guys out there that have been looking at trying to close on a deal, and we'll kind of focus on that, and the speakers will be geared around that as well. So if our theme for 1 week is dealing with a legal issue or a specific legal topic related to your acquisition, then we'll bring on one of our lawyers to talk about that area, in addition to kind of what we talked about, to kind of bring it all together. So we'll try to make it educational, but I want it to be interactive. I don't want to spend all the time talking, so I'll expect you guys, your homework will be to participate and ask those questions and maybe talk about an example of an issue that cropped up in your deal that's related to that specific topic. And I'll bring examples to the table as well, since I've been involved in a number of transactions. So we'll try to make it interactive and fun and useful, but really want to get it to a point where you guys are getting useful information that you can actually put to work right away. And I know Daniel's done a great job bringing hosts on or bringing guests on to talk about those areas. And I think, we'll just kind of continue with that tradition, but also trying to make it useful from the standpoint of actually going out and using those ideas and concepts in actual practice.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. One of the things I have always asked, in addition, like to bring different topics related to acquisition, as you said, is to ask the acquisition entrepreneurs, what is a topic of their interest, right? And they have made suggestions, but I wish those would be more. So that's one of the things. The other is, from time to time, and we can do these, every other week or every 4 weeks, have someone presenting what they've done on a particular, deal, they're looking at. Like a couple of weeks back, I think it was Benjamin, who presented what he was doing in terms of the negotiation with the business broker. And there were some very, very positive, very good comments, some by John and someone else, a couple of guys participating, made very, very good contributions. So, and this is one of the things I believe that we're looking for, is not only that you guys receive information, from the guests, the speakers, from us, but that you also make contributions, because I believe that most of us, are at the same level of experience, and many of you guys have already, owned businesses and been in different professional, circumstances, and have a lot of experience and a lot of value, and a lot of opportunity to make contributions. So do not be shy to, provide your experience, make your own comments, and add, to the conversation, right? I'll say that's what makes this environment more fruitful. Okay. Usually every call we start by asking if any of you, had any progress on your deals. So that's also material for Ty. He writes a newsletter, every week, and he gets some information from our call, and then from there we go and explore a topic. So that's what we can do.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that I sit on the kind of investment committee, will bring some of the relevant topics up that we hear during investment committee meetings. Obviously, we won't reveal specific information around the actual potential, seller in the company or what have you. But we can definitely point out some of the issues and challenges that we're hearing through that committee. And so I'll have, depending on kind of if we've had a meeting, that week or that, up till in between our different AP calls, I'll gather a list of, of some of those particular challenges and issues. Sorry, you guys heard there's a fire truck going by my.
No, you're good. You're good.
But yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll gather up some of the challenges that we're bringing up to the specific acquisition entrepreneur, some of the questions that he should probably go back and research or get answers to, and some of just the general challenges of a particular transaction. I'm happy to relate kind of those particular insights to you guys and those particular challenges, because we're, all of us are going to come across those as we go through our own acquisitions. You may not come across all of them at once, but at some point, there's going to be 1, 2, or 3 of them that you're going to come across, and hopefully during this process of having these AP calls, you can kind of remember exactly what was discussed, kind of what was a potential resolution to some of those issues, and then implement that within your own acquisition plan. So we'll definitely want to make this useful for you guys, and not just a gathering where we sit around and drink coffee and listen to a bunch of information. What do they say? Information is power, and my saying is no. Information isn't power; it's potential power. You still have to be able to go out and make use of that information to make it actually powerful. Otherwise, it just becomes another data point on in your computer, in your head, or wherever that never gets used for anything. So. We definitely want to make sure that you guys are taking advantage of that, and that's why we're going to try to make these very interactive with you guys. And if Daniel's co-hosting with me, maybe some weeks him and I will do a question and answer session where I interview him or he interviews me, and that gets the juices flowing. But for sure, you guys, we definitely want you guys participating and getting some use out of this. You paid to be a part of this community. You're part of the Acquira family, so to speak. So, treat us like family. If there's tough questions, ask the tough questions. If you want to, if there's something that you want to challenge us on, challenge us on it. There's nothing personal there. You may be right about an issue that, maybe we hadn't thought about. So feel free, don't be wallflowers on these calls. If you guys really have a question to answer or to ask, feel free to reach out and ask that question. No judgment from anyone here, because someone else is probably thinking of that question and they're just scared to ask it. So reach out for sure.
Perfect. So we have Johnson, who recently joined Acquira. You have completed the gauntlet, or you will this week, right? And then we'll continue working in your acceleration program, right?
Yeah, actually completed the gauntlet last week, and
Last week.
Yeah,
Right.
yep. And I started went through lesson 1 and 2 of the actual program. So yeah, I'm familiarizing myself, reading the books and getting acclimated. I think I went through the almost done with the financial intelligence book, and I went through the E-Myth book, and as I'm going through the program and the lessons, so yeah, trying to obtain the knowledge as I go.
Excellent. Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Did you have any? Did you, in the first part of your training, did you have any specific challenges or that you wanted to discuss? Maybe I know Daniel's kind of the training guy who answers all those questions for you guys.
Yeah,
He
was really helpful. Yeah, he was definitely helpful when we had our conversation. What I've been doing thus far is there were some areas, right, that I did have questions on. I didn't understand. My personality that I am is I try to utilize the resources, around myself, things that I've learned, first and foremost in the past, and the people that I've, worked with. And then, if I can't get it from that point, then I might tap the Slack channel on the shoulder, or, Daniel or someone else from that perspective. But so far, so good. Still, I remember Daniel told me, I said, I'm ready to go 100 miles an hour. He said, just go 10 miles an hour. It's an endurance.
Yeah, I did.
Takes, right?
Yeah, I told Jeff this is an endurance race. This is not a speed race.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. That's right.
He was fired up, and I said, "Yeah, no, that's good, but don't you want to make you don't want to make mistakes by going really fast, you know?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll tell you. I when I joined Acquira, just over it's just been about about a year now, a year ago. One of the issues I had, I'm Amir, who kind of ran most of he did what I do now. So he kind of ran the investment committee, that process, and then he helped the entrepreneurs beyond that investment committee to kind of go through to the close process. And so when I first came in, one of his challenges for me was, hey, you need to go through the training program completely. And I hemmed and hawed about it, and I was like, "Come on, I come from investment banking. I know how acquisitions are affected. I've been doing this, for years. I've worked in private equity doing acquisitions. I know how to acquire a company." Well, so I fought it for about a week, and then he finally got on my case enough to where he told me, "You need to go through our training." So I went through it, and I literally tried to blow through it in basically 4 days. Because I figured I could skip over a lot of parts that I already knew. And then he actually quizzed me on a lot of it, and I realized I didn't know anything when it came to small business acquisitions. So I would heed Daniel's advice. Take your time going through it. Obviously, you don't have to go super slow, but if you're trying to absorb all that information, definitely take your time and go through all the exercises, and read all the books, and get yourself prepared to actually do an acquisition, because it becomes an expensive mistake if you're not prepared once you actually go down that road.
Yes.
You're prepared adequately.
and the same happened to me. Same experience as Rich, but with Kylan. I said, "Hey, I already have a prospectus here, so give me the methodology. What steps? No. You first need to go to the gauntlet. No, I don't need that." Right. So I was exactly, this in the same situation as Rich. I have experience with mergers and acquisitions. I know finances. As a matter of fact, I had placed a couple of LOIs before joining Acquira that failed. Right. So Kylan insisted and that I would go through the gauntlet, and I did, and I was happy. Because then I want to, started working on a much more organized manner.
Yeah.
And when I talk about, 10 miles an hour, what I mean is to keep working at the pace, whatever the pace you want to pick, because you may have a, full-time job and you have only time at night, or you can dedicate part of your day, half of it or whatever, or full-time to your acquisition. Whatever is your situation, the key is never stop. You're going to complete an acquisition. I have, and I'm not very smart. So I'm sure you guys can complete your acquisition as well. Just do not quit, do not stop. This is not rocket science, but it takes sometimes months, 12 months. Okay. But you're going to end up, with the business that you wanted. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a key.
Yeah, and I definitely think that going through the suggested books helps, because as I'm going through because I've done the investment banking, but I told you I was on the technology side of the house, right? And as I'm going through some of the books, it breaks it down in the perspectives or in a way it's much more applicable to, the lessons that are set up, and it helps with actually comprehending some of the information and the questions asked and the structure. So definitely understand.
Yep. And that's going to be the constant. So today you are probably learning how to acquire a business because you haven't acquired a business before. But once you're a business owner, you're going to be also in front of situations that you have not been in front of before. So you need to continue learning and developing your skills to, face the situations that are just new to you, and you gotta, kind of be reasonable, get informed, make a decision, evaluate whether, the result of that decision is going the way you expected or you need to adjust. What are the consequences and decision making, and risk and all of that. So that's what being an entrepreneur is, being in front of a company is not, I mean, once you close on the business and you complete the acquisition, you just got to the starting line, not to the end line. Okay.
Now the work begins. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what if we start by some of you sharing what you have done, in the past week? What progress have you made? Anyone who would like to share?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing if you want.
Okay. Yes.
So I was looking at a plumbing company in Massachusetts 5 or 6 months ago that fell through, but I struck up a friendship with the business broker. So a couple of weeks ago, he sent me another local plumbing company that he'd been working with. So we started looking at that, and then Daniel helped me look through the prospectus and went over it with me. And it looked pretty promising. So I actually set up a meeting yesterday with the business owner and the broker. And it was just a meet and greet. And we had a really good meeting. Nice guy. He lives literally 10 minutes from me.
Nice.
So we had a lot of commonalities. We knew a lot of the same people, go to a lot of the same places. So we really hit it off pretty well. So talked to the business broker after that meeting. And then again this morning, just to get some more information, just some follow-up details. And then I've been working with Daniel, who's been coaching me through it and been a great assistant, or a great assist. I appreciate it. And so we're now putting together a slide deck presentation for the investment committee. And hopefully I'll get that finished tonight or tomorrow and get that scheduled to prepare an offer. But I obviously want to get a couple more eyeballs on it before we do that.
What was my question when you mentioned about having this call with the seller? I did ask, what's your strategy? What are you trying to accomplish?
First and foremost is he had met a couple of other people already. And my first goal was I wanted him to feel comfortable with me and to like me.
Yes. And
So,
I thought that was very smart. I thought that was very smart.
Having sold a family business, a multi-generational family business about 7 years ago, I thought it was important that, he's selling his baby, his family's history. So to do that, he's got to feel comfortable with who he's selling it to. So my first goal was just to get him to like me.
Yes. And I told Jim, that is very good, very smart, because you want to be in top of the list. In the top of a list of buyers, there's going to be more than one buyer with the money. Probably one of them may have all of it in cash, and you may have to still apply for a loan. So who knows? You may be in some points at a disadvantage.
Yeah, the
So
broker
whatever
did
you
share
can
with
do.
me last night that he said, well, the initial feedback was good. He really liked you, could picture doing business with you, and wouldn't mind staying on if you want him to for as long as I want. He said one of the other guys that he met, he couldn't stand. So
yeah. And then, that's the one thing about it too. If you build that rapport with the seller ahead of time, and you as a business seller in the past probably understand this better than most, you're willing to maybe not take the highest offer or the most timeliest offer if it's someone you actually like, and there's someone that is gonna, that they feel like is gonna protect their employees, because a lot of these employees are long-term employees, and these sellers are concerned about them for the most part. So I think that was an excellent thing. That was an excellent first step, and probably the first step that everyone should try to get to in their acquisitions. I guess the only caveat there would be, you manage to have that relationship with the broker. Sometimes the brokers can be obstinate, get in the way. They won't let you talk to the seller. They won't, and so it sometimes becomes hard to build that relationship with the seller until you get beyond the broker. So in your case, it was great that you had that relationship with him to kind of move it to that next stage.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
So that's I think important networking is, even if you read a prospectus from a business broker, it's, even if you're not interested, just shooting them a note to let them know and know why and what you are looking for, and just try to build those relationships, because you never know what they're going to come across down the road.
Yep, that's exactly it. It.
Yep. Very good. Let's go with, because I think both raise their hand.
Sorry, I pushed the hand button, not the microphone button. It's nice to see you guys. I know Paul and I haven't been on here in a while, but we've been very, very active. Probably talked to at least 30 different businesses at this point, and have underwritten a number and had a lot of seller calls. And I think, it's really helped further refine our criteria and what we really feel like is going to be a great fit for us. And I think the question I'd throw out there now is, we're feeling pretty good about at least one, if not a couple, of opportunities in front of us, and given the extensiveness of an LOI, are just kind of, I think we're kind of wondering, like, at what point do you say, okay, I've had enough due diligence and enough pre-LOI due diligence and enough conversations with the seller and broker to know that there's enough to make an offer, and then structuring it in a way that you're protected in that, going into the due diligence phase. And I guess that's because we might be ready to put in an LOI on a business this week that we really like, or next week. And, I guess we're just wondering, at what point, like, I thought I recalled that the investment committee process, you typically did that after a business was under LOI. So maybe I have that a little bit backwards, but
I'll give you my answer,
and then I'll give you mine.
and we all can, give our opinions to Nate. For me, it will be looking at the investment thesis, all of the risk factors, and if there are any that are deal breakers, I'm finished and I move on.
Yeah.
If there are none, then I will, take the next step, which is, make sure that the valuation, is where I wanted it to be compared to what, the asking is, and try to see, okay, so this is the difference between one and the other, and, then approach the business broker and say, hey, do you have, your valuation, there's a difference. I don't want, to present something and then, it's completely off your expectations. So let's talk a little bit about, the valuation. I'm, willing to show you mine, but also, I want you to show me yours. How did you arrive at this price? I'm interested in this, and I want to invest more time, and at the same time, I would like to have a response, blah blah blah. And then you start approaching, your LOI, with the seller. But for me, the key is, for example, key man risk or sales, customer concentration, those kind of things. Are there any deal breakers? No? Go ahead. So the price difference, for example, is not a deal breaker. They may be just, asking for X amount of money, and at the end of the day, they know they are going to be way below that, right? So price difference to me is not a deal breaker. Actually, you do not see it in the investment thesis.
Yeah, that one thing to that end that's been really good for us is we're very engaged with the bankers from early on in the process where we feel like we might be serious, where we'll present to them um, our underwriting, our perspective on things, and get their perspective so that, because we also don't want to put in an LOI that has a debt component without knowing that at least one or multiple banks would love to do that deal.
Yeah, you can do you can do a subject to clause in your
Yeah.
LOI,
But even still, we don't want to waste our time or waste their time.
So I agree with Daniel, and I'll kind of give it to you from a big picture standpoint, based on kind of the process that we'd like to use through Acquira from that standpoint in terms of how we taught you guys how to do these things. So, assuming you've already put a pre-LOI offer in that was accepted.
No, we haven't. That's where we haven't. So that's where we're just and I think we're at that phase where we feel like we like something enough that we want to do that.
So from Daniel's perspective, Daniel's absolutely right. I would walk through, first of all, on the pre-LOI offer, is definitely go through that investment thesis calculator that Daniel talked about, to make sure there are no significant deal breakers there. And don't worry about the pricing component, especially where there's like multiple calculations or what have you. I would not necessarily ignore those, but the market's changing, or the market has changed since that spreadsheet was developed. So some of those calculations are out of date. But especially on the qualitative factors, as long as they match up with your investment thesis, you could probably start from there, and then just take a kind of a high level look. Obviously, make sure there's no glaring issues on the sales side, the gross margin side, and Daniel and I can help you kind of evaluate those at a very high level, and before you go way down the road, and also making sure, that there's if you can get information on key people, key man risk there. Make sure there's no vendor concentration risk from the supply chain. Make sure there's no sales channel distribution risk, or customer concentration risk. So you get kind of some of the big picture highlighted items correct, and you understand that there's not too many risks there that would kill the deal. You put in that. You can go ahead and put in that preliminary offer. A pre-LOI has no legal standing, so if there's some issue that crops up at some point, you can always walk away. The pre-LOI is designed just to put in a preliminary offer based on the idea that you don't have all the information to put in a formal offer. Okay. Mm-hmm. Once you get through that process, if the pre-LOI is accepted, then you want to make use of Acquira, and you want to make use of the investment committee process, because what's going to happen is you're going to be forced in, before you even bring it to our investment committee, you're going to be forced to think through the business issues there, because you're going to have to put together, obviously you're going to put together your investment deck for that meeting. You're going to have to put together your financial model for that meeting. So you're going to actually have to think through some of those key issues. Okay, how much am I going to be having to put, what employees am I going to replace? Am I going to replace the general manager's salary? You're going to have to factor all that kind of stuff into your model. So you'll be thinking through those issues. Okay. Once you get to that stage and you're ready then to present to the investment committee, then what we'll do is we're going to start hitting on some of those major points to make sure that you're comfortable making a formal offer. So I wouldn't even put a formal offer until after that investment committee meeting. Because then once you get into that process and we've all agreed that, hey, this is a great business, you should move forward on it, then you can start working on the formal offer. And I would highly advise, you don't have to, especially on your first acquisition. If it's beyond that, you can pretty much have a template set in and just adjust the template. But on your first transaction, I would highly basically, what I'm saying is I would highly recommend that you work with an attorney on that first one, because
on the LOI.
Yeah, on that LOI, because what's going to happen is there could be legal language in the LOI that contracts you or binds you, and then there could be financial penalties for not going through with that, or allow them an end to actually sue you for whatever. So I would work with an attorney on that, especially on that first one. Thereafter, it's probably not as much. You may have your attorney review it, but basically you could use that template, understanding that there's general language in there that you can use for your next transaction. And then there's going to be obviously some specific language for, geared towards terms for the next transaction that you could simply make on your own and be comfortable knowing that that LOI is protecting you on the backside. So, so once you get through from that point on, and your lawyer reviews your LOI, then you start to go into that due diligence phase, and that's where you kind of can do the deeper due diligence, and then you start getting through that process, and then your attorney is probably drafting the purchase agreement as you're going through that process. They're not going to wait till the end because there's just going to be other, not minor issues, but issues at the end that they can change and add to the purchase agreement as you go through the due diligence process. So that's kind of how I would work it.
So
in your guys'
Go ahead.
experience, with the pre-LOI offer, how serious and binding are you seeing sellers consider that? Because to me, I feel like that might feel a little, okay, you emailed me an offer, yeah, this works for me, but I'm still having calls with other buyers. I'm still entertaining.
There's no exclusivity period in a
definitely until the LOI is accepted is the time when you can ask them to, take the business off the market. Right.
Yeah. So
even the LOI
you're not going to really
binding.
unlock any additional due diligence materials, but you're going to get a good sense of, are they going to be in our ballpark or not?
Yeah, that's what the pre-LOI offer is for. Is to kind of get a gauge of where the pricing is on a particular deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, also get the feeling if they want to move faster and they don't want a pre-LOI, you want to go straight to the LOI, tell them, okay, I'll present the LOI in a couple of weeks. First, you see the investment thesis and you see no deal breakers. Then you go to the investment committee. The investment committee sees no deal breakers. Present the LOI. I mean, even the LOI is not legally binding. So as long as it is, supported by recommendations from your legal team, you can walk away from that LOI at any time, right? And not a problem.
As long as you have the right clauses in place. Yep.
Yeah. So those two things, your investment thesis and the investment committee.
And if they want to go directly to LOI, that's where you actually have you can put pressure on them to start delivering information, because you can't you can't go to LOI without having financials for the last 3 years, information about the seller, information about key employees, suppliers. You can tell them this because now you have the hammer, because they want to jump straight to an LOI, and you have to have that information. You just basically tell them, I have to have this information to do some preliminary due diligence to determine whether whether we can write an LOI on this deal.
We've been pretty fortunate to get mostly all that kind of information prior to any offers, and certainly prior to any LOIs. So that's good to know.
Yeah. Right. Because it's pretty reasonable to ask for financials. In order to conduct your business valuation. There's no way you're going to, be able to make a valuation if you don't have financials. So if you see if the financials are stable, at least as stable, not all over the place, up and down, then the next question is, can I bankrupt this business? Well, no, I cannot, right? Unless you see, key man relationships, right? Those kind of things, or, some customer concentration, critical things, right? Other than that, you say it is reasonable, then the business is going to remain making money, right? I'm not going to bankrupt the business. I'm not going to tank it, right? So move ahead. Yeah, keep going.
And one thing I'll point out too is, we talk about customer concentration, which is very important, but that really is more an issue when you're dealing with a business-to-business customer. Mostly, if you're doing plumbing services or whatever, HVAC services, and you're obviously selling to residential customers, that's not usually an issue.
Correct.
But you're still gonna, you still could have supplier issues or what have you. So you still go through those steps, through all the necessary steps. And what I was gonna get to anyway was just, all you guys and gals that are out there, that are buying these companies. We always talk within Acquira. We always talk about, post-acquisition systematization. I can never say that word. Systematizing the business. After through the post-acquisition phase. Systematizing the operations so that the business can scale. Well, on the acquisition side, you should be thinking the same way. You should have a systematic process that you go through for every single acquisition you do. Develop that checklist for yourself at the beginning stages of the acquisition, when you source a deal, at the beginning acquisition stages, through the middle, and obviously on the due diligence side, we're going to have templates and checklists for you guys from that perspective. Your attorney's going to have those. Your QOE consultant is going to have those as well, which is another thing I would say on the, when you're LOI, you're always going to, you're going to have these subject to clauses that allow you to walk away. But one of the key ones also is going to be that QOE, subject to a quality of earnings report. That's going to verify those numbers, because I've seen it in more cases than one where the seller has talked about, they sent over these great numbers for this particular business. And then when you look deeper, all of a sudden your SDE goes from $500,000 to $100,000. Or there's some shenanigans with how they're recording transactions. So, that's always going to be a key clause in your LOI as well. That would allow you to almost walk away if there's certain numbers that aren't hit, that are represented, that the seller is representing, that are there. So, yeah, that's it.
Very good.
Hey, everybody. So this week, just been preparing. I've got two businesses that I'm looking pretty seriously at, and finding it's a lot of work to try and do both concurrently, but both are good options that I'm looking at. So currently most of the way done with trying to put everything together to schedule an investment committee call, and then want to jump on the other one and get some of the information there. But just trying to go through everything, all the different sheets, all the different, trying to consolidate P&Ls into a usable format. Anyway, all those kinds of things, so I can work through the process in my mind and try to apply what I learned from the Acquira training and whatnot. The big thing that I am going to do this week is I'll be in Houston with an Acquira training deal, but on the way back, going to Arizona, which is where my target area is, and
that's where I live.
Yeah, where do you live at, Rich?
I live in South Scottsdale.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Cool. So I originally grew up in southeastern Arizona, trying to get back there, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
One company I'm looking at's north of you, up in Cottonwood, and the other one's down in Tucson. So
Okay.
on the way back, I'm going to go and meet with them this weekend, one on Saturday, one on Sunday afternoon, and just get a better feel for them. I don't have an LOI on either one, but I figured, they're willing, for me, this is going to be helpful to either disqualify them or push to the next step. So as I've done that, I've tried to create some loose expectations with them. I haven't sent them, say, a list of questions.
And don't do that. The first
Yeah.
time out.
Again, that's not my goal. My goal really is to get in there and just observe. Yep. and ask questions as makes sense, based on what I've learned. So, and then I guess I want to turn that back into a question and say, is there something else I should be doing with that strategy? Is it good? Is it bad? Am I going there before an LOI is a little bit different than going after? Just some thoughts on that so I can make the best of it.
I'll let Daniel jump in. I'll answer kind of briefly on this, but I would say that's fine that you're going out to meet with them. I think the purpose of that first meeting should be to build the rapport that we talked about earlier with both sellers, and show a genuine interest in the business, and you almost want to flatter the seller to a certain extent about how great the business looks, how well they've done. That was the reason you reached out to them. You're impressed with what they've been able to do, and you really want to spend time kind of really asking them questions about the business at a high level that they can answer right off the top of their head. I wouldn't go in there with a list of questions where they're going to have to, well, let me call my CPA, or let me, call the operations guy to, to dig into our customer issues or customer, who are our main customers. You really want to kind of keep it at a high level and very general to let them see that you have an interest and that you understand the business model and how it works, so that they feel comfortable that, okay, if we were to sell to this guy, we feel comfortable that he would be able to kind of run these businesses effectively. From there, that's my kind of take. Daniel can kind of jump in and give you his take as well.
Yeah, no, actually, Alan asked me, and I told him that it was, a great idea to do that, and continue the trip from Houston to Arizona. That's excellent, because it's trying to do the same as Jim, which is building rapport and showing interest in the business, right? One of the I really like the way Jim approached a situation when prepare yourself rather with a list of questions with open-ended questions. So Jim said, for example, and I really loved it, walk me through X. So it's a very open-ended question. Then you're asking them or allowing them to tell you whatever they want on that particular area or subject. Walk me through your customer acquisition process, right? Walk me through your whatever service delivery, right? Tell me how you approach whatever, right? Open-ended questions, and then they start talking, and then you show your interest, making additional points or questions, from time to time. So it's not a monologue, but it's a dialogue, right? Where they tell you about the business and you're learning, right? But at the same time you're learning, you'll probably see from the questions you have prepared that there are some things that are not covered. So you can always interject or say, well, what about that, right? So when you acquire a customer, do you sign an agreement, right? Or you go to a work order, whatever, right? So open-ended questions, okay? That I like that. And yeah, build rapport with the seller, with the business broker. I told Alan that I know the business broker he's working with. Actually, she was in one of our weekly calls, and you can look in the archive the recording.
Is that Flavia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
She's very good, very professional.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah. So as I'm there, this is kind of a oddball question, but taking notes, because there's going to be a lot that we cover. Is it appropriate for me to have a notebook there?
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy, because that shows the business owner that you care, and that you're seriously interested in what he or she has to say. Because there's nothing, from a practical standpoint, and from the, again, I'll kind of take it back to my experience doing larger transactions and small and mid-market transactions. There's no really rapport building when you're dealing with a CEO and CFO of a company, when you're either trying to acquire them or they're looking to buy a company, and they're using you to kind of find an opportunity or what have you. It's more about data and understanding process and systems and that sort of thing. But when you're dealing with a small business owner, I think, and this is what I had to learn when I came into Acquira, and just working through a lot of these transactions on my own. When you're dealing with a small business owner, they like nothing better than to talk about their business, and they like people that are interested in their business. So if you're carrying a notepad and you're taking notes while he's telling you about a certain process or how they're acquiring customers or what have you, through those open-ended questions that Daniel mentioned, he's going to be impressed with you. You're going to build rapport that much more, because he's going to look at you like, okay, this guy actually cares what I have to say. Because I'm sure you know, he's probably not getting it from his wife at home. She probably doesn't care. She just wants to see the money that's coming into the account. You know, his kids don't care because they've gone to college to become coders, so they're looking at trying to get a job with Google or somebody like that. So I'm sure he's going to be very happy that you're willing to listen to him talk about,
Yeah, and the fact that you're taking notes is going to be very illustrative, that you're asking him for relevant information.
Yeah.
So, right, basically, right?
Yeah.
So
Good.
because they could be like talking depending on the personality of a person or of the people or the seller, and they could be talking much and saying little,
Mhm.
right? Or meaning very little, that I'll say interesting or important information, not disclosing any of that. So if you're telling them you're taking notes, you're telling them you expect relevant information, right?
Yeah.
And also that you're serious about the business, and about the opportunity.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
So my takeaway from what y'all said was going with, well, I guess my mental notes is I want to maybe make a list of what I want to know, my questions, which are not necessarily questions for the business owner verbatim, but what I want to cover, and then just ask open-ended questions, be interested, build rapport, and that's the real focus.
It's like dating,
absolutely.
you know.
And,
Get them talking, and they'll think you're the greatest person in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. I'm excited. I mean, it's fun. This will be my first site visit. So first 2 site visits. So
well, let us know how it goes. Yeah, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
So Ryan's raised his hand. You have a question?
Hey, Rich. Yeah. I was curious as to, we've heard some calls from legal teams and others, brokers and such, that Acquira works with. Do you have something like that with like headhunters for helping find a management team, like a general manager? Specifically, if you're going to go do a roll up and you're trying to find one acquisition after the other, and you're going to go there and you're going to work with your GM to get spun up over 6 months to a year, and in the meantime you're searching in the background for the next acquisition, are there resources or a network or like relationships that Acquira already has to help you streamline that process, so you can, you just find one after the other as you, I know I'm making it sound like it's just easy and it's a factory, but do you guys have that established? Or
Yes, especially if you are considering Acquira post acquisition with the integration, the ACE framework. Actually, people and culture is one of the 4 main areas that we help the acquisition entrepreneur with, to integrate a company. And definitely there are resources there to help with identification, because if you're going to have, let's say, a role where you're going to be more responsible for the change activities, right? Change management, and the strategies to implement, let's say a new ERP or a new marketing strategy, and you're going to have a general manager for the day-to-day operations, right? So it's better to have that individual identified throughout the due diligence process, and see if there is someone from within that can step up, or you need to bring someone from external, and the sooner the better. You don't want those 6 to 12 months or 3 to 6 months of transition with the seller without the general manager being present. The earlier the better, right? So this person also learns, right, from the seller. And definitely, if Acquira is going to be involved in post acquisition, then we'll be happy to help identifying that, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so the resources are there. I don't know that it's a situation. Daniel knows more about this than I do, because I'm more involved on the acquisition side of it. But from what I understand, Acquira does have the the ability to kind of help fill that role fairly quickly for you. But it's not a situation where we're probably working with a management consulting firm and having them kind of headhunt for us. It's more of a a situation where we're involved in the market. We obviously, with these home services businesses, we know the people that are managing these businesses. We know the companies that are out there. And so we probably got a network of individuals that we can definitely reach out to help speed up that process through the integration framework.
Right.
So that you can go on and build and search for that next acquisition. So the idea though is for you to come in. Obviously, any company that you're buying, it's important that you have some face time with those employees as well. Even if you do have a general manager, just so they know who you are as the business owner. Your general manager obviously is going to answer to you. But you want to identify and make sure you have an understanding of how everything works within the business, because even though the general manager may be running it on a day-to-day basis, you still have to feel comfortable that you understand how that business is running, because and not to put it in a negative light, you're ceding control somewhat to a general manager, but you don't want to cede everything. You want to be able to still monitor and understand what that general manager is doing. You want to make sure that if that general manager were to walk away, you could step in temporarily as needed until you could fill the role again. And so it's important that you don't put yourself in a position of being taken advantage of because you don't know how your business is operating. But
Right.
so I mean, you obviously want to be involved at least the first few months of the business and then move on. But
Yes, and there's a couple other comments, from what Rich is saying. One, to the lender and to the SBA and to those, facilitating the acquisition. You want to tell them you're going to be around the business. You're not going to be a passive investor, and it's not only what they would like to hear. It's also, if we ask the acquisition entrepreneur to do the heavy lifting, throughout the identification of the business, analysis, valuation, LOI, due diligence and closing, is because the more they know about the business, the less risk and the more success,
Yeah.
Because there have been some people, like, let's say, like a family office, right? And then the representative is approaching to us and they ask, oh, do you have, guys or people who can do all of these for me, right? And we say that's not the point. Even if we hire, an individual to do it for you and we charge it, what we want is that the person running the business does these for the purpose of identifying if there are any risks. Is not for doing or not doing the work. That is the point. So exactly as Rich said, even though someone is helping you, you want to make sure you understand, how the business operates, and if you need to let go the general manager, you can, right?
Right.
Did we answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I purchased a company with some other people, and and Acquira even talked about this. Ideally, you're going to find someone who's internal that you can promote, right? Because they're already familiar with everything. They're familiar with the customers. We did that. I think a month later, this guy he was in over his head or didn't want to do it, and he left. So yeah, we had to scramble around, and then we went to the next guy and the next guy, and it just didn't work. We got rid of it.
Yep. Yeah, and that is definitely a risk, because you always bring a person to the level of their incompetency.
Right. So we were pulled in way more than we had discussed, and before we had acquired this organization, and it was okay because it was a part of, we were trying to package several businesses to have a full service pool business. So we had bought this pool service company. That one was a nightmare. And then we had automatic pool covers, which was great, but it was the team. And then the cash flow from that was, we were able to use that for the down payment. The profits were the down payment on a pool construction company. So the thing that kind of sucks for us right now is that some of the high margin things are the rehab and replacement things that you only get if you have a service. You have that access to repeat customers through the service. We don't have that. What we're getting is just the contracted new build work now, and the same with the automatic pool covers. And we're looking at maybe acquiring another pool service company to get that back. But everybody's kind of traumatized from how much of a nightmare it was before. So, but we also realize that we're going to be stifled until we have that again.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, you can somewhat, all of that kind of relates back to this particular employee figuring out that he couldn't do the job and he walked away. That's where you almost have to, during that process, if you're going to try to promote from within and identify that key employee, you've almost got to be able to do kind of a skills assessment of that particular employee. Otherwise, it probably makes sense to kind of go outside of the company to find someone who maybe he's already been in the
You know what it was? It wasn't even that he was incompetent. It was that the new owner was kind of, I mean, the prior owner was kind of staying on, but he wasn't as involved in that aspect of it. And the trust wasn't there because and we didn't do all of our due diligence, but I don't know if you can always know everything. Here's something we're never going to know.
Yeah.
He owed that guy money. He had stiffed him on some paychecks in the past or something. And I don't know, we just weren't able to dig that up.
Yeah.
And so there was bad blood there that we had, and we were totally blindsided there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why we always recommend to, complete an acquisition using the services of a company like ours, right? And I'm not saying that doing it with us is going to be risk free. It's just going to be less risk, right? Like in my case, we presented a couple of LOIs, and I'm happy that we were not successful, because later on we found out that the two of these businesses were just not good, and we were trying to acquire them, right? If I would have been following a process like Acquira, I would have found out immediately those situations, and we would have never presented an LOI. So there's always going to be a cost or a risk, because some people say, well, join a company like Acquira, you have to pay money. Yeah, you have. But at the end, it's like when you're running a company and you build a team or a board, right, of people who maybe, for example, work in the same industry but in a different geographic location. So they're not your competitors, but there's a lot you can learn from them, right? So you build a board, and that's one of the many things we recommend doing, is to have others around. Yeah, you're going to treat them nice. You're going to pay them some fee, for meeting with you every quarter, but you're going to get their advice, right?
Right.
So there are different ways of doing things and learning. In this case, well, you learn about all of these things later on, and you say, well, if I would have done it following a more structured process, my risk probably would have been less. I would say yes.
And it would cost you a lot less on the back end. And I laugh when people say, "Oh, it costs money to work with Acquira." Well, let me just use an example here. So one of our clients at Morgan Stanley at one point was Disney. Okay, you know how much Disney had to pay for us to go out and source a potential transaction for them, and for us to be right there to kind of to help with the analysis, to help with the valuation, to give our advice. Disney literally paid us $150,000 retainer for our services before we even did anything. And so for someone to complain, even, you take that down to a small business, you can't have a small business mentality and try to build your portfolio of acquisitions. You can't have that small mind like that. You've got to be thinking, look, I pay these guys $3,000 to get their advice. That's peanuts compared to what the acquisition price is on a potential transaction. Okay, and not to mention all the savings from heartache and money that you're going to have by working with folks that have been through the process, that understand the process, that can teach you the process, and that can help, do the risk reduction on the back end for you. So I don't understand that mentality. I'll never understand that mentality. And quite frankly, when I come across someone like that who complains about spending $3,000, to me, that tells me that they're probably not the type of people that any of us should be wanting to work with, because if you go on the cheap on the front end like that, then just imagine what that person's going to be like, either as a business partner or actually running a company. So I laugh at that mentality. Sorry for going on my little soapbox there, but
No, you're right. Actually, one of our partners, Ken, likes to say that as when you have, for example, the other day, Hayden and I were, discussing his acquisition, and was discussing the valuation, right? And if they were insisting on XYZ amount of money, and I said, okay, I agree with it, but you can ask for, the let's say the transition services, as they have indicated they will stay, to be free of charge. And I said, that's $100,000, advice.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually saved that money, So he says, I really value having other people with ideas around, because that can save you in a single comment in 30 seconds, $100,000 that he was going to pay. He was able to negotiate, free of charge. Transition services. It's an obligation of the seller, right? Of course, in return for you agreeing to their price. So what they want to do is they try to maximize the money they are receiving. That's fine, and they're willing to do some other things, which is working for free, right, for a few months. Because normally you would pay, the seller to stay around, right? You can negotiate that. So that's what he calls a $100,000, phone call.
Yep.
Which is
That's
same
exactly
as
it.
Rich is saying. Other comments, guys?
All right. Well, looks like we.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. No.
But,
All right.
do you want to say something?
No news from my side this week, honestly.
Okay.
Keep working on the projects, different ones.
Okay. Let me know if you want to catch up and, look at what you're dealing with, okay?
Yeah, we'll try. We're probably going to be trying to talk to you Friday as normal with Dave and you.
I may be busy on Friday. We have a cohort. We have a workshop. Are going to be here in town, but early next week I'll be available.
Early next week will be just fine, Daniel. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Okay, guys.
Good call. Good questions. Next week I'll send something out probably by the end of this week as to kind of the topic. And if I line up a guest speaker for that topic, I'll let you know who that guest speaker is. And we'll jump on next week and